Before you start listening to the podcast episode, I would like to tell you about the October program in Palestine that my colleague Salim and I are preparing. We studied the tour guide program together, and we are both very motivated to show both the beauty and the reality of Palestine today. The program we are planning is 10 days, from the 3rd until the 14th of October. It needs a minimum of 10 participants and it can have a maximum of 16 participants. If we have more than 16 people who want to join, we may organize another program in November. And if October or November is not good for you, you can still reach out to us because we are planning similar programs in the future. During the 10 days, you will travel across the West Bank and visit Jaffa. We will have a day of olive picking, 2 nights with local families, 2 short hikes, stays in Bethlehem, Jericho, Abud, and Nablus, and of course, we will visit Jerusalem. If you want to know more about this program, then you can visit the website storiesfrompalestine.info. You can also follow us on social media, and if you send us your email address, we will add you to the mailing list and we will send you the details and the price of this 10-day program in October. You are listening to Stories from Palestine podcast, a podcast recorded in Palestine and about Palestine. My name is Crystal. I am originally from the Netherlands and I am married to a Palestinian. We live in Beit Safafa between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and we run Singer Cafe and Al Jisr Bar in Beit Sahur. Before moving to Palestine in 2013, I worked as a teacher and tour guide in the Netherlands. I have a degree in history and in tour guiding and many years of tour guiding experience. Due to the COVID pandemic, tourism in Palestine came to a complete halt, and that's why I started Stories from Palestine podcast in August 2020. This is the 2nd year of the podcast, with every week on Monday a new episode about the history and heritage of Palestine, as well as the reality of life today. I hope you will enjoy today's episode. So several months ago, I became part of this Facebook group called Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. And in the last couple of months, I've been posting some photos, mainly of my mother-in-law's food, not of my own food, because she's an amazing cook. I'm not so good. And I also noticed that sometimes I wanted to say something about my podcast, but there was a strict moderation on the group. And then there is a Friday post under which you can post your own links. So I used to do that. And then one of the founders of Mama's Palestinian Kitchen actually said, well, we can do a podcast episode about Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. So here I am with Abbas. Thank you very much for your time. You're in America. I'm in Palestine. We have 7 hours time difference. And before we talk about what Mama's Palestinian Kitchen is, can you first introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Abbas Hamida. My parents are originally from the village of Deir Yassin on the outskirts of Jerusalem. I was born in Puerto Rico several years after my parents had left Palestine as refugees for the 2nd time. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Deir Yassin massacre. So that was the first time my family were Palestinian refugees and driven out of their homes. And then when my dad got married, my family lived in a Jericho refugee camps in Ariha. So after that, and as everybody knows around the world, or should know, in 1967, they were driven out again as 2-time Palestinian refugees into Amman. And after 1967, eventually in the early 70s, we ended up in Puerto Rico. And in 1975, I was born. So that's my backstory. I was raised in New York. We moved to New York City after Puerto Rico. I stayed in New York with my family, grew up there. And then finally, in 2004, I moved to the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. And that's where I am currently. I am the co-founder of Awda, the Palestine Right of Return movement, which was created in commemoration with the Deir Yassin massacre on April 9th, 2000. So we've been in existence for 22 years now. This is long before Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. And then finally, during the pandemic, I decided to create a fun group where Palestinians can virtually meet online and share their cooking and their pleasure with our Palestinian cuisine, just to kind of have some sort of connection, because it was brutal during the pandemic. We could not do any more protests because Awda is the lead organization on Palestinian functions in the United States. So Awda has been in existence for 22 years. And then the pandemic came about, as you know. So we kind of lost connection on the ground. There were no more Palestinian functions. Awda was behind the anti-AIPAC rally that happens every year in Washington, D.C. So that's the biggest Palestinian rally or protest that happens for Palestine in the United States. So during that time, I was trying to figure out a way where Palestinians can kind of virtually meet. And I said, in my mind, the best way to do that is by sharing our cooking. Everybody loves food. And that's one thing that all Palestinians, Arabs, and probably people around the world agree on is food. So there's no disagreements there. So we were in other pages. Some of us were in other pages. I don't want to mention names directly, but they were not extremely friendly with Palestinians. So as you know, when we have an issue with boycott, or we see somebody posting, for example, something that should be boycottable, we get upset and we tell the person like, hey, this is, Israeli products and you really shouldn't buy it and you should support the BDS movement. So some of the admins would get annoyed, because Palestinians, as you probably already know, are considered troublemakers wherever we're at. So if we're in a chat group, if we're in neighboring countries, sometimes people look at us as troublemakers because we have a cause, we have a plight, it's unfinished business. And we're constantly fighting for our freedoms and liberation movement. So anyways, we were treated like that on one of the pages, and the admins would literally block posts, anything to do with BDS or anything of that nature. Or if it was, something extremely Palestinian, they would get upset. So to make a long story short, I decided to go ahead and launch my own page, which was Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. I mean, we, as Palestinians, Arab, Muslims, we revere our mothers, so I figured what better way than to dedicate a page to all mothers, and call it Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. And that's when it happened. It was during the pandemic. I did it at the spur of the moment. I had no idea that it would explode like it has been. So literally, this was like probably at 2 a.m. when I launched this page, right before I slept. I was just upset in my mind. Like, we need something. We need a platform that welcoming Palestinians, even with food. Imagine that. So that was launched. It was explosive. I immediately, after creating the page, contacted some of my closest friends and said, hey, can you please become admins with me? And I have a good feeling about this page. It's really growing really fast. And of course, they accepted. And then later on, we took some more admins in. And here we are. Almost 2 years now. It's going to be close to 2 years. And we are at the verge of 100,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about 90, almost 96,000 right now. So I think soon after Ramadan, we will probably hit the 100,000 mark.
That's a lot of people. Do you have any idea who they are? Where are they from?
What we do on the page every once in a while is we do like a roll call. And we just basically ask Palestinians and supporters. As you probably already know, this is not just a Palestinian platform, but it's a pro-Palestinian platform. So people from all walks of life can share their ethnic foods. It's not just for Palestinians. So this has broadened the page. Some other pages only allowed Arabic dishes, for example. And people would complain. Like, Palestinians also eat other dishes. We don't just eat Arabic food, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're people who enjoy Italian cuisine, right? We enjoy food from everywhere around the world. It's not just Palestinian food. And we make Spanish food and we make all kinds of Mexican and so on and so forth. So that has brought in our platform. And these people are pro-Palestinian supporters. I think the base of this page started with activists. So I have a large activist circle from Awda, and that's how it started. Once I started the page, my friends were added, their friends were added. So if you notice, it's extremely pro-Palestinian and to the core. So for example, if a Zionist sneaks onto the page, immediately they're flagged down. So this is a page where people really care about it, and they just want to be able to have a platform where Palestinians are not interrupted. And I think that was kind of the perk, if you will. When people joined, we really don't welcome any type of anti-Palestinian sentiment, obviously. So because it is largely a Zionist-free zone, if you will, people just feel like they can post their sentiments, they can post their feelings. Now, as you mentioned earlier, we do have restrictions, okay? Because as you know, Facebook and all social media platforms are clamping down on anything that's pro-Palestinian. And the slightest, I don't want to call it a mistake, but the slightest strong sentiment on Palestine can get you censored. So, for example, if you literally call Zionist criminals, they might censor you. I've been suspended for simply using terms that refer to Zionists as criminals. And this is something that's been really, really frustrating for Palestinians.
So that means that you post something and then Facebook stops you for a while from being able to post and to access your own profile and your pages?
Yes. So this is why it's crucial to have other admins on the page, because as a creator of a page, if you get knocked out and you don't have admins, your page is gone. This has happened. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Samar al-Asawi case, who was on hunger strike years ago, dating back to, I believe, 2012 or 2013. I created the Free Samar al-Asawi campaign, and that also exploded back then. I did not have admins, and I lost the page because they knocked me out. They took me off of Facebook at the time. And so I had this page basically from 2009, my personal page. And because it was connected to the Free Samar al-Asawi campaign, I was knocked out. I lost the page. I couldn't go back. So I learned from that mistake when I created Mama's Palestinian Kitchen that you have to have people you can trust to be admins and run the page with you. This way, if you're censored or if you're knocked out, the page continues, until you could finally get back on Facebook. It's a very frustrating process, but this is why we're strict, because as you know, even though there are plenty of accusations that our cause is anti-Semitic, it is not, because we are Semitic people, obviously. So we sometimes encounter people, it could be a troll, it could be some people who basically have ill will towards the Palestinians and saboteurs, quite frankly, who might go on the page and say, anti-Jewish remarks. And that's very dangerous for the page. So we're very strict about it. This is why we feel that we can only post, some of the political element, if you will. So we update the community. We have updates. For example, when Gaza is being attacked, when Al-Aqsa is being attacked, Sheikh Jarrah obviously is continuously attacked. So anything to do with some sort of breaking news on Palestine, we administer that portion because we're careful and we're monitoring. A lot of people don't know this, but we get notifications from Facebook, when people post derogatory remarks, and it harms the page. They continuously tell us that you have to monitor the page, or this person said this. So basically, we have to dispatch some sort of discipline on that person, or else Facebook will take action and knock out the page. So it's very frustrating. We want people. I mean, if it was up to me, I would open it for political discussion. I would allow people to post freely, because people want to post, the Palestinian kitchen entails the Palestinian struggle. When we're in the kitchen, we talk about Palestine. Everybody knows this. So, yeah, we would allow it, but we just fear that we may lose the page because of that. So that's why we're a bit strict, on some certain aspects. And it has worked. And we try to explain to people that this is why we take these measures. It's not that we want to. It's not that we want to be controlling, if you will. But unfortunately, we don't have too much room to play before they knock out the page. They've knocked out pro-Palestinian pages on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. So this is why we're cautious. And we've got a few warnings, by the way, we still had quite a few warnings. I'm currently suspended on my main page.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm suspended, and it's running through my ad.
Oh, that's so harsh. Can you tell us a little bit about the how many? Because you have a couple of people who are helping you in admin and moderating.
Mm-hmm.
So, how many posts on average are being posted per day in that group? And maybe you can mention a little bit what kind of posts they are.
Yes. So the page is really one of the most active pro-Palestinian pages on the internet, hands down, because I'm in a lot of groups. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. And this is really a proactive page. I'm on some other Arab cuisine pages as well, and they're dead in comparison. They're really dead. Our page is exciting. There's just something exciting about Palestine. People really want to support the cause, even if they share a dish.
Yeah.
So, and they want to stay around Palestinians. So I think on average, right now, currently, I want to say it's anywhere between maybe 50 to 70 posts. This is people sharing their cuisine on a daily basis, which I know sometimes it doesn't seem a lot. You figure almost 100,000. Why isn't there like 200 posts, But that's still pretty active. If you go to other pages, you would see maybe 3 posts, 5 posts, 10 posts. So when you have 50 to 70 posts, this is on average. Now, during Ramadan, we probably are over 100 right now. So, and then another thing is some people are shy. Not everybody likes to post. So you have to take that into consideration. I think some people are too self-conscious. They don't know if they put their makluba, tonight, if other people will like it. So I've talked to people, some friends, and some of them don't like to post for that reason. They're like, wow, there's like just such high standards on that page with the cooks or chefs or somebody who just simply wants to whip up something. And they're like, wow, these people really know their stuff. So I think there's an intimidation factor as well, because I think there would be more posts.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Not everybody feels comfortable. And then you still have an element on the page that probably doesn't know that they can post non-Palestinian dishes. We have it, we say it every once in a while on the updates. What we do also is every 10,000 mile mark, I do a live. I go on there, I greet people, I encourage them to continue to bring in their families and friends. I didn't do it on the last time because I was suspended again. You know what I mean? So hopefully on 100,000 mark, the ban will be lifted on my personal page and I can go on there and do a live. But that's something that we've done from the beginning. It actually started with every 1,000. So every 1,000 member, I used not live, but I used to post. We used to put, hey, we have 2,000, 5,000, 7, 10, 20, and then it seemed like it was growing so fast. My other admins were telling me to slow it down. Maybe we should do every 5,000. So then we did every 5. Now it's up to every 10, but we do the live. The live has been consistent, except for the last time because I couldn't get on. But pretty much every 10,000 members, we do a quick live, spend 10, 15 minutes, basically directly chatting with whoever's online at the time. And we basically get information from our members on what they want, how they want the page to progress, and give us some ideas. And that's where Business Friday arose, as you mentioned probably earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, tell us about Business Friday.
Yeah, so people want to post. We get a high number of requests where people want to advertise. And the thing is, it's not fair to the members if we advertise every single day because people are there to see food. People want to post their food, and they just want it to be a nice platform where they can share their recipes and look at each other's food and just happy times. Food really does bring people together. So when you're constantly advertising this, advertising that, it turns into an advertising platform. And I think members get annoyed because the page doesn't become clean. It loses its focus. So we decided to do from the members. This actually came from members. So why don't you do a Business Friday? It's like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. So we rolled with it. It was highly successful in the beginning. I must admit, it was really successful and it was something that was welcome. Not so much recently. It just dies down like everything else. So I think even though it's consistent, but it really has lost interest for one reason or another, because maybe people just want to post food. They don't want advertising. So we know what works for the page. And that's basically an avenue for us, for whoever wants to post. We highlight them. We tell them, hey, if you want to be highlighted, we have an email out there or you can just inbox any of the admins and we'll take it into consideration. And we do the same thing. For example, right now we're doing, instead of Business Friday, we're doing Charity Friday because of the holy month of Ramadan. A lot of people want to post up their links, and it's not strictly set on that. For example, we do make some exceptions. If, they can't wait till Friday. Let's say there's a Palestinian protest in New York City. Somebody wants to advertise that. We allow it. So as long as they reach out to us, as long as they know the rules and reach out to the admin, we will allow it. We'll post it ourselves. Because I think it's extremely important that we get the most out of the page. And if we're not supporting our own people, if we're not supporting our businesses and not supporting our functions for Palestine, then it really becomes a defunct group. So I still firmly believe in the core of activism, because I'm an activist before a foodie.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of equal actually, but I'm an activist before being a foodie. That's funny though. Most recently, people recognize me as the creator of Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. I'm like, oh my God, what happened to Awda? But
yeah, because I'd like to know a little bit about that, also about what kind of activism did you do in your life?
Mhm.
Also, for me, I'm very interested to understand more about the Palestinian diaspora, because you said your family is from here, but they had to leave. They were refugees, and you grew up in a completely different environment. So how do you still relate to Palestine? And can you visit? Have you been here?
Absolutely, I can tell you all about that. Like I said, first and foremost, I'm a Palestinian activist. So the first time I discovered my roots, heavily, and it really woke me up, is when I went to my first visit to Palestine with my father, may he rest in peace. I went with him during the first Intifada, circa 1987, 88. So I went to Palestine at the time. I was 12 years old. I was the same age as my father when he survived the Deir Yassin massacre. Now, the Deir Yassin massacre took place on April 9th, 1948, almost 74 years ago, actually 74 years ago, this past April 9th. This is a massacre that was basically the fuse of the Palestinian catastrophe, which the Palestinians call a Nakba. So Deir Yassin was the fuse of the Nakba. When that happened, approximately 250 people were massacred. Now, keep in mind, that might sound like a small number. There's no small number for genocide or ethnic cleansing, but in comparison, when you think about, other atrocities, 250. Keep in mind that the village only had about 700 people. So 250 people were massacred in one day on April 9th, 1948. And my father was a survivor of that massacre. And he was only 12 years old. So the irony behind me going back to Deir Yassin with my father to visit, and we weren't allowed to go in, by the way. We had to sneak into the village because it's cordoned. And they have a mental health hospital there, I believe, currently. Yeah. So we had to sneak in to Deir Yassin. I was 12 years old, and here I am sneaking into my ancestral village with my father. And like I said, the irony is I was 12, so I was the same age when he left or survived the massacre at Deir Yassin. And that was an awakening for me. That was where my activism truly started, 12 years old. I was there. My father was basically, going back, and there were still figs. There were still figs growing on some trees, okay? And he was picking it off the tree, and he started to cry, and he's pointing in a direction. He goes, that's the house that I used to play at. I used to play on these grounds. Keep in mind, there's no house. There's no house, and there's no playground. So I said, what house are you talking about, Baba? I don't see a house. He goes, it was right there. That's where the house was. That was an awakening. He started tearing, and I immediately, something took over me. Like there was this weird anger. I'm 12 years old and I'm angry because I'm angry my father's crying.
Yeah.
He's looking at this house that doesn't exist. And he's talking about where he used to play and where the playground was, So this was a deep awakening for me. That was the highlight of my life.
Wow.
I knew right there and then that I had to do something about this. At 12 years old, I just felt this anger overcome, righteous anger, and I felt that I had to do something. And when I just basically hugged him and we left, and obviously we stayed in Palestine and East Jerusalem. My mom is from Al Isawiya, by the way.
Oh.
So my dad is West Jerusalem. Deir Yassin is in West Jerusalem. My mom is in East Jerusalem. So I'm 100% Jerusalemite. I'm from Al Quds, from both ends. I cover both ends. So we go back, and we lived in New York at the time. And I was telling my dad, please, you have to teach me. You have to tell me about the massacre. Who survived the massacre? Tell me about your parents. I want to know about my grandparents. And I want to know about your siblings, my aunt. I want to know everything about this massacre. So he finally told me, because usually people don't like to talk about these things, but he saw I took an interest. So then he promised me to take me to Palestinian functions. At the time, Yasser Arafat had a brother who was in the States, and he used to be some sort of like a spokesman in some areas to some political capacity. So we went and we met with Arafat's brother. I remember it was at the Holiday Inn in New Jersey. And there was a Palestinian function there. And then it took off from there. So I became a Palestinian political activist at age 12.
Wow.
And it never stopped. It never stopped. Anytime there was a demonstration, Baba, please take me.
Yeah.
I need you to take me. And my father was the type that really didn't attend demonstrations. You have to understand, he comes from an area that was completely massacred. So I don't want to say that they have a defeatist mindset, but there was a tragic situation that happened to them. And I don't know if it's something that they just give up or it's something that they want to basically not think about. I think they don't want to think about it for the most part, in my opinion. But I had to do something, and it was a promise. It was a promise that we continue to visit Palestine. And my dad and my mom used to tell us, you have to. And they built a house, on the outskirts of Ramallah for us to be able to be attached to the land to go visit it. Now, as you know, as Americans, we can only go as tourists. We're not entitled to live on the land. We're not entitled to be citizens of our own ancestral land. But they kept the connection for us. So there's something very valuable in that lesson. And at that time, I obviously got older and more politically aware. When I was in high school, I attended more demonstrations, and then in college and so on and so forth. And this is basically where the beginning of Awda had started and the right of return. So there was nothing available at the time that focused on the right of return of Palestinian refugees. Okay, we were with the Arab American Institute. We were with the ADC, the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, that still exists till today. So these were mainstream Arab organizations. They were not Palestinian. Okay, these were just like, mainstream causes. Let's vote, get out the vote for this person, vote for that person. So basically some civic duties. But there was nothing focusing on Palestinian refugees. Even when they had Palestinian demonstrations back then, it was not focused on the right of return. So it was an awakening for me again, and this was a liquidation factor. They wanted to liquidate our struggle. So even though some people thought they were doing the right thing by talking about two-state solution and so on and so forth, really, that's an erasure of our struggle. Yeah. Because our struggle consists of refugees. If you take out the equation of the Palestinian refugee issue, there is no cause. Okay, for people like me from 1948 Palestine, if you take out Deir Yassin, if you take out the refugee issue, which is central to our plight, we have no struggle. People don't think about that sometimes. There are over 7.2 million Palestinian refugees languishing around the world, and the majority are internally and externally displaced. If you take them out of the equation, there is no struggle. What are we struggling for? So that was my second awakening. And that's when Awda came about. That's when we said we need a movement that focuses on the right of return. That's when Awda was born in the year 2000, April 9th, 2000. And that wasn't just a mere coincidence. We did that on purpose because it was during the commemoration of the Deir Yassin massacre, I believe the 50th at the time. Mm. And Awda has been in existence ever since.
And what kind of activism did you do with Awda? Is it only protesting and demonstrating, or is it also lobbying or awareness raising?
It varies, yes. So Awda is mostly known for our demonstrations, okay? But it's not just demonstrations. We also do teach-ins at universities. I spoke at the University of Maryland, Cleveland State University. There are too many right now to think of, but I've spoken on behalf of Awda and invited to speak on the right of return for Palestinian refugees. So we do advocacy work, teach-ins, all types of educational areas consisting on the right of return. I mean, we drill it. When we first started, people did not know about the right of return for Palestinian refugees. So Al-Awda has helped mainstream the right of return inside the activism circle here in the United States. So in the beginning, it wasn't accepted because people were telling us, oh, this is basically you want to throw the Jews in the sea. And, their rebuttal was like, if the Palestinians return, what happens to the Israelis or what happens to Jews? So they're always constantly basically asking the victims for solutions. The Palestinians are victims. So they're asking us what happens to the Israelis or what happens to Jews if the Palestinians come back, neglecting the original people of the land from coming back home. So it took a long time for people to start to accept this. I'm talking about ordinary American activists here on the street. So Al-Awda was vital in mainstreaming the right of return, mainstreaming meaning amongst activists, of course, not on CNN or Fox News. But anyways, so we believe that we've held the right of return. We've held it high, and we've protected the right of return of Palestinian refugees for 22 years now. So I think that's the greatest accomplishment for Al-Awda is we drilled it, we put it here amongst activists, and now you can go to any activist circle, and it's a demand, basically, that if you support the Palestinian struggle, you have to support the right of return.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're really, basically giving minimal support, and it's not essential. So I think that was the greatest accomplishment. But yeah, we do whatever we can, by obviously any legal means that we have. So sometimes we also do fundraisers for the refugees in the camps, obviously, because our main focus is about the refugees. We sent computers to the camps in Lebanon and in Jordan. So we've done multiple things with charity work as well. We work with the Gaza Mental Health Hospital, which is basically part of an UNRWA program. So a lot of the things that we do overseas has to be done through the United Nations, because as the eye is always on Palestinians, right? No matter what they do. So when we work within Gaza or we work within, externally outside, we try to do it through UN channels.
I'm also curious, in general, there are a lot of Palestinians who live in the United States. United States, very big country. So how do these people, I don't know, relate to each other? How do they maybe meet up? Do you organize big demonstrations in different cities in all around the country? And also, how do they relate to each other, seeing the fact that they are coming from different parts of Palestine and they are from different generations since the Nakba?
Yes, that's a very important question. So this is why Palestinians are considered professional protesters. This is something in our blood. So that's the way we connect. Awda has chapters throughout the U.S., from East Coast to the West Coast and in the Midwest. So we do hold major demonstrations, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's in the San Francisco Bay Area, whether it's in Manhattan, whether it's in Cleveland, Chicago, St. Louis. So we hold massive demonstrations across the country. I think that gives an opportunity for us to basically back our people back home. And don't forget, we're fighting for ourselves. So it's not just supporting the Palestinians on the ground, we're supporting ourselves. And that's when the right of return comes into play. So I think that platform gives Palestinians a connection. This is why we must continue to hold protests in support of our struggle, because it brings us together. We network, we get on the buses, we get on planes, we get on, we converge at meetings. As you know, even Harvard lately has taken a stance against apartheid. And the BDS movement connected us together as well, the boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel. So all these factors connects the Palestinians together. We're one people who are basically languishing, all over the world. I mean, I know Palestinians, very little maybe, but there's Palestinians in Japan, So, and obviously Australia and anywhere you can imagine, there's going to be a Palestinian. The majority of Palestinians in the United States are most likely in Chicago, New York, New Jersey, California, Anaheim in particular. You also have Cleveland, Ohio, has a very large population of Palestinians. So we stay connected on that level. I would like to think that Awda played a pivotal role in connecting Palestinians because the right of return is central. It's something that's central. It's something that's near and dear to most Palestinians. You will find people maybe who don't know about it, and you have to educate them. So we even educate our own circles sometimes because some people still don't understand, how deep the right of return is and how central it is to the plight of the Palestinian people. So this is why constant reminders within are also important. So we're really not preaching to the choir. We're strengthening ourselves. And we have a platform called Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. So I think that's a venue where Palestinians, almost 100,000, are online. And that's a huge population. It's a huge chunk of the Palestinian population. We've gotten so many positive comments. Somebody one time posted on their page that Mama's Palestinian Kitchen basically teaches tourism on Palestine more than like the Palestinian Ministry or whatever of tourism. They made that comment on their page. It was so like heartwarming to see that, because we really do. We have, for example, we have like Steve Sosaby from the Palestine Children's Relief, PCRF, and he's posting live from Ramallah, from Gaza. We have people who post from Nablus. They go into a knafa place in Nablus and they're posting and they're showing us how they make knafa from scratch. And then you have tons of people coming in from Jerusalem, from the old city. They go into the souk. So these are connecting factors. And we also have people like you, right, who are podcasters and who are on the page and who are promoting Palestine, in their own ways. And you're connected to Palestine through marriage, right, and kids.
Yeah.
So you're vested in the struggle.
Yeah. There's no going around it. No.
So you have a responsibility too, right? You have a responsibility because your kids are Palestinian.
You're right.
So yeah. So you have that responsibility to carry on our struggle through your kids, through your podcast, through your husband, right? And this is why when I saw you on Mama's Palestinian Kitchen and you said you do podcasts, I was like, wow, it would be nice to do a podcast on the page and on Palestine in general, because I think we instill inspiration, all of us, on Palestine, whether it's Mama's Palestinian Kitchen, whether it's your podcast, everybody plays a pivotal role on promoting the Palestinian struggle in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, true.
And I understand you do tours, right? And I saw you do all kinds of stuff that was wait, I'm sorry, was that you or on the tours?
I do also tours. I studied the tour guide program at the Bethlehem Bible College.
That's you. Okay, then it is you. Okay, sometimes I get confused because we have different people on there.
Yeah, basically, the way that you started Mama's Palestinian Kitchen in the COVID period, I started the podcast in that time because there was no more tourism. I was already working in tourism, but I started studying the tour guide program to become a licensed tour guide. And then I realized that there is no tourists to practice.
Right.
So then I tried to find another platform, and then I found that podcasting, video tours is also possible, but it was a little bit step too far for me.
Yeah,
I'm not that technical. But recording a podcast and preparing for the story, sometimes I do solo podcasts, sometimes interviews, was really a great way. And it's funny because for me, really, the main aim of my podcast is to put Palestine back on the tourism map. I want people to see that Palestinians, they deserve tourism just as anybody else. It's no need, because a lot of people think that when they come to Palestine, they must volunteer or they should do something. It's like, no, just you coming and enjoying the beauty of Palestine, seeing the heritage and the history and tasting the food.
Yes.
It will make Palestinians happy. And this is what we need. We need people to come and to see and to explore. And yes, we need to show them the daily reality also of life under occupation. But in the same time, through especially the heritage, the music, the hospitality of the people, and the food, obviously, this is how people get to know Palestine. And that was my question for you also, is like, when we're talking about Palestinians in diaspora, and living in America and also getting introduced to a lot of other kinds of foods, because it's a melting pot in the end. But how do you see that the food is still Like, how is it still an important part of people's life?
Yeah. Well, everybody likes to eat, right? We have to eat to live, and what better way than to infuse Palestinian cuisine? And like you said, food attracts people. It really does. So for the non-Palestinians, I've seen people come into the group who just want to learn about food. It wasn't in particular about Palestine. So we introduced Palestine through our makluba, right, which is the signature dish of Palestine. And obviously other types of food like massacre, which is the actual Palestinian national dish of Palestine. Okay. But I think makluba is more popular in the sense that it's made daily. It's probably easier and less messy, and it's in a pot and so on and so forth. But I think this attracts people because there's a myth. There's a myth about Palestinians never existed, right? Palestinians don't exist, or that Palestine never existed. So if you have these basically ancient dishes in Palestine, if you have these dishes that trace hundreds, if not thousands of years on the land, I mean, even before the modern period or, during the Canaanite period, some of these foods have evolved since then. So they're ancient foods. So when people connect the dots, they see, well, there was a people and there was a food and there was a cuisine. And if you look at the occupier, they have no ethnic dishes. They have no ethnic, I mean, unless you're from Poland and there's Polish food, or you're from the United States and you eat a hamburger or McDonald's, that's your ethnic foods. But when it comes to Palestine, we have dedicated ethnic foods. We have dedicated ethnic dresses, as you know, the thobes, the stitchings on the thobes will tell you where someone is from, what village they're from, what city they're from, their lineage, their tribes, their pride. So I think when people see the culture, because our food is part of our culture, when they see that, they learn about the Palestinians. And then they might think to themselves, like, what the heck is going on? There's something wrong here. We've been taught the wrong narrative, that Palestine never existed. They even go as far as to say that the Palestinians were made up. They were fabricated by Yasser Arafat. And there were some Bedouins, there were Arab Bedouins who came to the land, of so-called Israel, right? So they've switched and flipped the narrative, which is 100% fabricated. There's no truth to that whatsoever. And I think this is the gateway for non-Palestinians to learn about Palestine through our dishes. If they didn't see that delicious makluba or that delicious msakhan, maybe they would never thought about Palestine or where it comes from or where the roots are, or delicious knafa, right? From ancient Nablus. Nablus is an ancient city. So I think that it is the gateway. I think that people are just happy to share recipes, especially for Palestinians. It really is a platform that brings us together. It makes people happy. And especially like right now, during the holy month of Ramadan, where we're fasting all day long, and then we break our fast at night and everybody's sharing their dishes. This is a very proud moment for Palestinians. There's a lot of symbolism behind sharing Palestinian ethnic foods, and it's delicious. I'm sure you agree, right? So
I do agree.
So just like your tourism opens people's eyes, food opens people's eyes.
It does. It does. Abbas, did you ever realize that most of the Palestinian dishes start with the letter M?
Yes, somebody posted that on the page once too. Yes.
مقلوبة, مسخن, مفتول, مجدرة, محشي. And I recently asked this in my podcast also, and there were some people that said that maybe it can be explained grammatically, that it's like an adjective because it is when something is done, like it is turned upside down, it is rolled, or it is something is done with it. So then in the Arabic language, it starts with the letter M. So I think this is where we have to look for the explanation.
Yes. Yeah, and I totally agree with that because, like you said, it's something that has already been done. Msakhan, right? It's not msakhana, it's msakhan, so it's done. Maklube, it's already been flipped. Mansaf, it's already been, the literal word of mansaf means destroyed, which is funny. So it's kind of like destroying the food, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's very funny, it's very funny when you translate it literally. And somebody brought that up once, by the way, in the page, and it was hilarious. I unfortunately don't read or write Arabic, by the way. But from my understanding, just learning, just from speaking, Arabic, although I don't read and write it, I'm very fluent in speaking it. So I understand what the terms mean. So I totally agree. It has something to do with the letters and how they're set up with the meaning.
And what is your favorite dish?
My favorite dish of all time, it's a tough one. So I say there's a tie between makluba and mansaf. And I know that some people consider mansaf a Jordanian dish. It's actually a Bedouin dish that goes way before, probably hundreds, of years before Jordan came into existence, right? So it's a Bedouin dish, but it's still the Jordanian national dish, obviously, which is fine. But there's always that kind of that argument, is it Jordanian? Is it Palestinian? Is it Bedouin? I think it's all the above.
Yeah.
And obviously the majority of people living in Jordan happen to be Palestinians.
Yeah.
So it's okay for it to be a Jordanian dish, a national dish. And it's definitely a tie. It would break my heart if I had to pick one over the other.
Okay. You can choose two. No problem. There are many to choose from.
Yes.
How does it make you feel when you see somewhere written online or in a book that hummus and falafel are Israeli dishes? Because we see that a lot of this food appropriation, where they write even cookbooks that this is Israeli food, and then they are using all these traditional Palestinian dishes.
Yes. My initial thought years ago, I used to be angry when I see the Israeli colonizer or the Zionist colonizer refer to our food as Israeli. It used to anger me, and I'm sure it angers a lot of Palestinians. But honestly, lately, I just laugh it off. I really do. To keep your own sanity, sometimes you just have to laugh things off. You have to make it cynical because it will drive you crazy if you don't. They have, like I mentioned earlier, they have no ethnic dishes. I know that people don't know that. That's the problem. People will believe that, but there's no such thing as an Israeli dish. There really isn't, because the Israeli occupation came into existence 74 years ago. There was nothing Israeli before that. For thousands of years, the Palestinians lived on that land. So when you say an Israeli dish, it's really laughable. There's nothing Israeli. There's nothing Israeli about their food. It's Palestinian, it's Arab, and they literally appropriate and steal this food, not only from Palestinians, but from Moroccans, from other places. And some people say, there's Moroccan Zionists, or Moroccan Jews. So couldn't have they brought their food to Palestine? Yeah, they might have brought their food, but they should still give it the original name. If it's couscous, then it's Moroccan couscous. It's not Israeli couscous. You know what I mean? So there's a problem with that, obviously. So I really laugh it off, and obviously if there's a comment online or I see it on the Food Channel, unfortunately, which is, it's very popular here in the United States when you look at the Food Network. And when they mention Israeli, you really do cringe because there's no such thing as Israeli food. It's all stolen. It's all appropriated, just like the land. And it's unfortunate that they have to steal our culture because they really have nothing. They come from all across Europe, as you know, from the United States, from Russia, from everywhere around the world. They might have ethnic foods, but it's not Israeli. It's where they came from originally, whatever their names are. There's too many to list, but it's certainly not Israeli.
Maybe there is a richness in that itself.
Yeah.
Maybe the same as in the United States, where you have people from all over the world coming somewhere and you can enjoy all their foods, but then don't steal the Palestinian food and call it Israeli.
Right. And then they carry the names. For example, there's Polish restaurants. You know what I mean? And their food is really good. I've been to some Eastern European restaurants. Their food is, especially their breakfast. Obviously, I don't eat pork. A lot of it does contain pork, but the non-pork products are really good. I enjoy eating their food. So it needs to be European and leave the Palestinian food to the Palestinians.
I have a few more questions. First of all, do you remember in the last 2 years that Mama's Palestinian Kitchen Group exists, that you saw posts where you saw dishes, Palestinian dishes that you had never heard of, that were completely new for you?
Yes. I saw several Palestinian dishes that I'd never heard of. And for the most part, it came from Gaza. Even I didn't know that the Palestinians in Gaza, they have their own version of a knafa. There was a whole big argument on there. People were like, no, knafa is Nablus. It's from Nablus. It can't be from Gaza. Well, they have their own version, and then basically people were asking, how could they have their own version? I guess something had to do with economical factors. So, for example, like the cheese and other stuff, because it was completely different, didn't look like your traditional knafa. It looked more plain, if you will. So there's certain dishes, and obviously a lot of it is like seafood based because they're on the coast, and a lot of their stuff is seafood.
And very spicy also in Gaza.
And very spicy, yeah. So I've learned a lot. Yeah, I really did. And I was actually very surprised. I'm like, are you sure that's Palestinian? Because I had never heard of it. So yeah, we do come across it.
Is there a place on the group where you can find the recipes? Because I tried to look for that, if there's like a tab where you can actually click and see recipes, or should people just go through the posts and do a search?
No. Yeah, we do have. There's a tab on there. You go on there and it says files. If you go on the top right-hand corner, you click the menu button, you scroll down, it says recipes. You click on there and there's a slew. I mean, the recipes have started literally from day one. And I want to give a big shout out to my admins for that. All of them have contributed, but in particular, Sandy Bint Elbira, she worked on that from day one. Literally went down. Anybody that posted a dish that wasn't on there, she would go down, copy, paste, give credit to the person, and put it in the file. And then we also have some of our own members who do that on their own. And that's something that really helps when you have administrators on the page. So I want to give a big shout out to all my admins, Iman, Faith, Fatin, Sandy, and Sabha. They are really essential to the page. Yes. So I don't want to forget that.
Thank you, moderators. Yeah, super important work. Yeah, I mean, I guess you spent a couple of hours a day just moderating the posts and sorting things out and responding and deleting, right?
Yes, we have a little private chat room for us. It's a little side chat, and we basically, it's MPK admins, and we're connected every single day around the clock, literally. So we become very close. Some of them were my friends long before Mama's Palestinian Kitchen, but we even developed a stronger bond coming together with this because it's really a huge task.
Yeah.
So they're amazing.
Yeah. And because I was also wondering there, even within Palestinian community, or maybe especially within the Palestinian community, you have a lot of differences also in political views, also in religion, because there's the majority is Muslim, but there is a Christian Palestinian community. Yes. There are maybe people who are not religious, like my husband, for example, is an atheist. My mother-in-law is more like a Buddhist, I would call her.
Wow.
Yeah. She believes in the reincarnation of the soul. So,
and they're Palestinian. Very interesting.
Yeah, they are Palestinian, and this exists also. So,
absolutely.
Do you see that also on the page, that there are discussions about topics? Or
I do see that a lot of times, because we kind of set the parameters on what the discussion is, but we learn that mostly from our roll call, because they say what city, where they're from. So we see they're from, all walks of life. We have people, members who reach out to us who are Christian, for example, and they remind us of the holidays. Everything comes from the members. That's what's nice about our page. We listen to our members. We have a high rate of Palestinian Christians on the page. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but I would say there's probably easy 20 to 30% Palestinian Christians on the page. And that's a high number from 100,000. So if we have 100,000, we probably have 20 to 30,000 Palestinian Christians on that page. That's a very high number. So they're there, and you see it through their posts. And, on Easter, they're reminding us. And I have a very good relationship with Palestinian Christians as an activist, from day one. Because when we do our rallies, Awda is pluralistic. We include everybody. It's actually in our bylaws that we're a pluralistic group. We're not religious. And at the same time, we're not completely secular, right? But we're pluralistic. So we include everybody. Everybody is important. So I'm always advocating for Palestinian Christians. That's been something central in my role. I've been to Palestinian Christian churches in California where I did speaking engagements. I get invited to a lot of churches where I talk. And I remind people every single day that Jesus was Palestinian, was and is Palestinian. If you look at the page today, I posted an Easter post about the holy fire the Holy Sepulchre, right? And Old Jerusalem. So we post it. We keep them engaged. We want them to feel welcome because they're a crucial part of Palestine.
I was in Beit Sahur today when they brought in the holy fire from Jerusalem. And I made some videos about the scouts going in front of the clergy to bring the fire to the church. And it was a big mixture because also in the streets, yeah, of course, you see the majority is Christian, but also the Muslims are coming. They are celebrating together. Beit Sahur is a very mixed town where our cafe is. And we saw everybody together. And when they have special, these ma'amul cookies that they do for the Eid, ka'akalid.
It's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing.
Yeah. It's amazing. Palestinian culture is really amazing. The thobs, right? Christians wear them too.
Yeah.
You see women with the thob who have a cross, and then you see the Muslims with the veils.
Yeah. So
it's really an interesting nationality. And Palestine, where Palestine is paramount. The country is paramount. It's above religion. And that's the one thing I love. And talk about Beit Sahur. Do you know Dr. Mazen Kumsiya?
I know him very well. He was my teacher in the college.
Nice. He's a co-founder of Awda, by the way. So if you see him, tell him that Abbas Hamida gives you his regards. And it's been a long time. It's been many years. We actually hosted Dr. Hanan Ashrawi at his house in Connecticut when he lived in the States before he went back to Beit Sahur.
Yes, I'm going to tell him because I see him regularly. He comes to our bar and our cafe also. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So if I can ever make it in Palestine, that's one thing I probably didn't speak about so far is that I'm banned from Palestine. I went in 2014 and they said I was a security threat after 14 hours of holding me, basically detaining me at the Allenby Bridge, crossing in from Jordan. I was held for 14 hours before they told me I was a security threat, to their so-called state, and that I wasn't allowed in. Now, they didn't give me a specific time to ban me or anything like that, but they did give me a stamp, and I asked them not to stamp my passport, and they stamped it, basically denying me from entering my ancestral land. And by the way, I was going there for an event for Deir Yassin, where activists from all over were converging at Deir Yassin for the commemoration. And I was denied entry. I was denied entry to visit my father, who's buried in the outskirts of Ramallah, away from his Deir Yassin. So there's a lot of things, involving that. But hopefully, if I can get back in, some people tell me to try, that it's not always like certain, if it's permanent or not. I don't know what the case is, but it's very difficult to understand. But I just know my status here in the United States as an activist. I'm sure they keep an eye on people like me. Because we're also Awda, by the way, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is one of the founders of the BDS movement. We're one of the 176 Palestinian societies who co-founded the BDS movement. So we're always being targeted because of that and because of our right of return stance, because we believe Palestine is from the river to the sea. And that's something that the occupiers do not like. So just an FYI.
Yes, Abbas, I really hope that you can try and get back in because now
I would love to visit
we
you.
really want to see you here.
I want you to give me a personal tour.
I will.
I would love that.
I will. We will do. We will go to Batir and I will show you UNESCO World Heritage and go around Bethlehem and eat lots of things together.
I'm jealous, I'm a
I imagine.
jealous.
Yeah. No, it's not fair. It's not fair that you can't enter your own country and that I'm here. And this is white privilege.
No, I'm saying in a good way. No, I love that you're there. I truly believe if we can't get in, we like people who get in, So that's okay for me. Some might be upset, but I'm not upset with that because I know you're doing the right thing and you're doing tourism and you're promoting Palestinian tourism. So, if I don't have the opportunity for that, then I would rather somebody do. You know what I mean? So no, for me, I love it. We also, there's somebody else on the page. She owns a restaurant there.
Morgan. Yeah, she's my friend.
Morgan. yeah, Morgan. She did a few lives and a few things on the page as well. I really, I don't know. I appreciate people like you. I think it's amazing, because
we are waiting for you to come, Abbas. We want to hang out together.
So I think my niece is getting married in August in Amman. So I think that's going to be my opportunity to at least take a chance and see if I get in.
fantastic opportunity because you already have to go to Amman anyway.
Yes.
You're so close.
Yeah. And if I get denied, I just go right back. Yeah.
Okay, I'm here in August. I'm waiting for you.
Perfect. Yes.
Abbas, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this interview. And if people want to become a member of Mama's Palestinian Kitchen on Facebook, how do they do that?
All they have to do is type in Mama's Palestinian Kitchen. It'll pop up. I think as soon as you put Mama's, it'll probably pop up. You go there, you click on the button, you wait for an admin to approve your subscription, and you're in. Also, I would like people to check out our website if possible, Awda, ALAWDA.org.
I will post it in the show notes.
Very good, yes, because it's very educational, and you can also get involved with Palestinian activism as well through the website.
Thank you so much, and see you in August.
Thank you, inshallah. I would love it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Stories from Palestine. If you enjoy the podcast, then here are several things you can do to support the show. Tell your friends about the podcast. Share some of the social media posts on Instagram or Facebook. Start following the YouTube channel. You can also hear the podcast audio there. And soon I will start uploading videos. Sign up for the email list so that you get a reminder with a clickable link to the new podcast episode. And in the future, you will be updated about programs and trips that I will start to organize. And of course, you can donate to help me pay for hosting the podcast and the website and all the related recording costs. It's the only source of income I have at the moment, so you can imagine how much I appreciate every cup of coffee or falafel sandwich that you buy me on the Ko-fi platform. All the links that you need can be found in the show notes and on the website storiesfrompalestine.info. That's it. I hope you will tune in again next week. If you enjoy listening to Stories from Palestine podcast, then I think you will also enjoy listening to my favorite podcast, which is called Jerusalem Unplugged. You can find it on most podcast players and on social media at Jerusalem Unplugged.